Lucas Martins built the Hearth to be more than just a restaurant. Nestled in the heart of São Paulo, his vision was simple yet profound: to create a space where everyone, regardless of status, felt valued and welcomed. But whispers of cold professionalism, favoritism, and prejudice have reached his ears, and Lucas can no longer ignore the growing disconnect from his ideals. Desperate to know the truth, Lucas takes a radical step. He dons the disguise of a homeless man and steps into his own restaurant. What he experiences leaves him heartbroken and outraged. His trusted staff turn cold, the high society guests sneer, and the very values he built the Hearth upon are nowhere to be seen. Only one person shows kindness, a new server named Mariana, whose compassion stands in stark contrast to the indifference around her. Determined to reclaim his vision, Lucas returns, ready to confront the hidden elitism and cruelty within his staff. But as he unearths deeper prejudices and long-held secrets, he realizes his journey will demand far more than policy changes. It will challenge the very hearts of those he once trusted. In a powerful twist, Lucas discovers Mariana's hidden past, a truth that will alter his understanding of compassion and redefine his life's work. Shadows of the Hearth is a searing exploration of prejudice, humility, and the courage to see beyond appearances. A story of one man's fight to restore the warmth he lost and the lives he hopes to change along the way. Lucas Martins strolled through the Hearth, his eyes sweeping over the tables, each dressed in pristine white linen under the soft glow of overhead lights. The place was bustling, but something felt off. He moved closer to a corner table, where two servers, Paulo and Juliana, were whispering. "Did you see the way that man's dressed?" Juliana murmured, her nose wrinkling slightly. "I thought this place had standards." Paulo chuckled. "I know, right? Not exactly the clientele I'd expect here." Lucas felt a pang of disappointment. Was this how his staff spoke about their guests? He cleared his throat, and the servers straightened up, masks of professionalism slipping back into place. "Good evening, Lucas," Paulo said, a little too brightly. "Evening," Lucas replied, studying them. "Remember, every guest here deserves respect. They're here to enjoy themselves, just like anyone else." The two mumbled their agreement, but Lucas sensed their indifference. As he walked away, his mind churned. Had his restaurant, the one he'd built to welcome everyone, become a place of quiet prejudice? In his office, Lucas sat across from Renata, his longtime manager. Her posture was impeccable, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She looked at him with an expectant gaze. "Renata, have you noticed a change in the way our staff treat certain guests?" he began. She raised an eyebrow. "Lucas, the Hearth has a reputation to maintain. Our clientele expect a particular ambience, an ambience that excludes people who don't meet a certain standard." Lucas challenged, frowning. Renata sighed. "It's not exclusion, Lucas. It's refinement. We've come a long way from your humble beginnings." Lucas stared at her, feeling an uneasy chill. "I built this place to be inclusive, Renata. I wanted people to feel welcome here, no matter where they came from." She forced a smile. "I understand, but we must evolve. Guests like comfort, sophistication." She shrugged lightly, as if it was all so simple. Lucas leaned back, unsettled. He realized he might not truly know what was happening within his own restaurant. That night, an idea began to form. At home, Lucas opened his closet and picked out an old, worn jacket that he hadn't touched in years. He found an equally frayed pair of pants, a tattered hat, and an old scarf. He pulled out his shaving kit and hesitated before deciding to leave his beard scruffy. As he looked at himself in the mirror, he hardly recognized the figure staring back. His clothes were layered, baggy, and mismatched, concealing the man of success he'd worked hard to become. But tonight, none of that mattered. With his heart pounding, Lucas whispered to himself, "Tonight, I'll see my restaurant through new eyes." This experiment would show him what the Hearth had truly become. And if he didn't like what he found, he was prepared to change it. Lucas entered the Hearth, disguised and ready for whatever he might face. As he stepped inside, he immediately felt the weight of the stairs. A few guests glanced his way before looking away with discomfort. He approached the hostess, who shot him a look of disdain. Sir, are you lost? Lucas cleared his throat, making his voice sound hoarse. I was just hoping for a glass of water. She tightened her smile. We don't serve that here unless you're a customer. Her voice was cold, dismissive. Lucas glanced around and saw Renata in the distance, overseeing the floor with a critical eye. He took a deep breath and walked towards her, hoping she wouldn't recognize him. As he approached, she turned and gave him a look that could freeze water. Excuse me, sir. You don't belong here, Renata said with barely concealed irritation. I just wanted a place to sit, he replied, his voice soft. Renata's lips tightened. There's a cafe down the street that might be more fitting. Lucas's heart sank. He nodded and retreated, finding a corner where he could sit quietly, hidden among the shadows. The painful reality of his staff's attitudes was sinking in. A few minutes later, a young server approached him, carrying a glass of water. Here you go, she said with a gentle smile, her voice warm and kind. You looked like you could use this. Lucas looked up, surprised. Thank you. I wasn't sure anyone would. The young woman, Mariana, shrugged. You don't need to thank me. Everyone deserves a little kindness. She hesitated, then added, If you're hungry, I can bring you some bread from the kitchen. Lucas felt a spark of hope. He accepted her offer with a nod, watching as she slipped back towards the kitchen. Mariana was the only one who had shown him humanity tonight. As he sipped the water, he realized he had seen enough. The kindness of one person had saved his faith in his vision, but it was clear. The hearth needed to change, and he was prepared to face the people he once trusted to make sure it happened. Lucas sat quietly at a corner table, observing as staff and guests moved around him. A few patrons cast dismissive glances his way. He shifted uncomfortably, noticing Sergio, the head chef, bustling past him, his face set in a grim line. Sergio barely spared Lucas a look before muttering to another server, We don't need people like that loitering around here. This place has standards. Lucas clenched his jaw, feeling both anger and disappointment. He'd hired Sergio years ago, trusting his talent and commitment. But had he missed this side of him? Lucas listened as Sergio continued, If they can't afford to dine here, they shouldn't be here at all. The word stung. This was the hearth, his sanctuary for all people. Yet, here was his chef openly disregarding that ethos. Determined, Lucas approached Renata once more, hoping to see some hint of empathy. Excuse me, ma'am, he murmured, keeping his voice low. Renata turned, a frown already forming. I told you, we don't accommodate stragglers. I was just hoping for something small, maybe a piece of bread, he replied, forcing his voice to sound frail. Renata's expression hardened. We are not a soup kitchen. Kindly leave. The harshness in her tone cut deep. Lucas had trusted Renata with his vision, with the principles that made the hearth unique. She had been here from the beginning, supporting his rise. Now, he barely recognized her. Yes, ma'am, he whispered, backing away. Her words echoed in his mind. We are not a soup kitchen. Had his restaurant become just another status symbol? Moments later, as Lucas sat despondently by the kitchen door, he felt a gentle hand on his shoulder. It was Mariana. Here, I brought you some bread, she said softly, slipping him a small basket with a piece of bread and a napkin. Lucas looked up, genuinely touched. Thank you, he said, voice thick with gratitude. You didn't have to do this. She shrugged with a gentle smile. Everyone deserves kindness. Besides, food shouldn't only be for those who can afford it. She paused, then added, My father used to say, a single act of kindness can change someone's day. Lucas managed a faint smile, deeply affected by her simple act of humanity. He saw in Mariana the values he'd hoped the hearth would embody. As he continued to observe, Lucas overheard Sergio speaking with one of his sous chefs in the kitchen. Make sure the dishes are perfect for the VIP table. They expect only the best, and that's what they'll get, Sergio commanded, his voice sharp. The sous chef hesitated, glancing at a dish he'd just plated. What about that customer who requested a slight change? Sergio rolled his eyes. Absolutely not. This isn't a cafeteria. If they want personalized orders, they can go somewhere else. Lucas's heart sank further. Sergio's attitude was infecting the entire staff. He had hired Sergio for his skill, but now he could see that the chef's arrogance was distorting the environment, fostering a culture of exclusion. The night drew to a close, and Lucas quietly left the hearth, deeply disturbed. He walked back to his apartment in silence, reflecting on all he'd witnessed. The prejudice, the dismissive attitudes, the judgment. These were the very things he had wanted to keep out of his restaurant. But then there was Mariana, who had shown him compassion when everyone else had turned away. She was a reminder of the vision he'd held for the hearth since day one. He now realized he would have to confront his own team, to expose the toxic behavior and make immediate changes. It was clear. The hearth had strayed, but he was determined to bring it back to the light. Lucas arrived at the hearth the next morning, feeling a mix of resolve and apprehension. Dressed in his usual attire, he greeted the staff, who exchanged curious glances. He ignored them and walked directly to his office, mentally preparing himself for the confrontation. Mariana passed by, and Lucas called out, "Mariana, can you gather everyone in the main dining room in about 15 minutes?" She nodded, sensing the seriousness in his voice. "Of course, Lucas. Is everything okay?" "Not yet," he replied, a steely determination in his eyes. "But it will be." The entire staff gathered in the dining room, murmurs rippling through the group as Lucas took his place at the front. Renata and Sergio exchanged puzzled looks, but Lucas didn't let them linger in their confusion. "Last night," he began, his voice carrying authority, "I came here dressed as a homeless man. None of you recognized me, but I recognized all of you." A stunned silence fell over the room. Lucas let the words sink in before continuing. "I saw how you treated me and others, not as people, but as nuisances. It broke my heart to see this place become something I don't recognize." Renata's face turned pale. "Lucas, I didn't realize." He cut her off. "Realize or not, I expected better. We're supposed to stand for dignity and respect here." Lucas turned to Renata, his tone sharper. "Renata, I trusted you to lead this place with compassion. Last night, I asked for a simple piece of bread, and you dismissed me. This restaurant was meant to be a sanctuary for all, not just for those who fit some arbitrary standard." Renata's eyes narrowed defensively. "Lucas, I was protecting the atmosphere you've worked so hard to build. We cater to a certain clientele." "No," he interrupted firmly. "We cater to people, Renata. That's the vision you seem to have forgotten." Turning to Sergio, Lucas continued, "And you, Sergio, I heard you refused to accommodate guest requests because you felt they weren't worth the effort. You think being the head chef means you only have to impress VIPs?" Sergio bristled. His pride stung. "I run a top kitchen, Lucas. We can't bend over for every little whim. You run a kitchen that reflects my values, or you don't run it at all," Lucas replied, his voice steady but unyielding. In the tense silence, Lucas looked toward Mariana, a soft smile breaking his stern expression. "Mariana, I saw how you treated me last night. You didn't hesitate to show kindness, even when you thought I was just a stranger in need. That's the spirit I want in this place." Mariana looked down, her cheeks reddening. "I just did what felt right," she murmured. Lucas nodded, addressing the whole group. "Mariana represents what the hearth was meant to be. Her compassion is what each of you should embody. It's not an option. It's a requirement." The other staff members murmured quietly, some visibly uncomfortable, others nodding in agreement. Lucas took a deep breath, feeling the shift in the room. His words had left an impact, but he knew he couldn't stop there. Clearing his throat, Lucas made his final statement. "From today, there will be changes. We're instituting new policies that emphasize respect, inclusivity, and kindness. I expect every one of you to show up with empathy, or this might not be the right place for you." A few staff members exchanged worried glances, while others nodded, encouraged by his words. Lucas watched the mix of reactions, understanding that this wouldn't be easy. "We will hold training sessions and discussions, led by people who understand what it means to respect others, no matter their appearance or social status," he continued. "I want us to be proud of what we stand for." As the meeting adjourned, Lucas caught a glimmer of hope in Mariana's eyes and even a flicker of reflection in Renata's. He knew it would be a long road, but he was determined to bring the hearth back to the warmth he had built it upon. In a quiet corner of the hearth, Renata and Sergio sat huddled together, discussing the recent changes with furrowed brows. "He's lost his mind," Renata whispered, her voice laced with frustration. "This inclusive approach is only going to hurt our reputation. Our regulars will start to leave." Sergio nodded. "I agree. It's soft. The standards that made the hearth special are fading." He paused, glancing around to ensure no one was listening. "We can't let him ruin everything we've worked for." "What do you propose?" Renata asked, intrigued. "Keep the staff questioning the changes. Make them feel uncertain," Sergio replied, his tone firm. "We'll show Lucas that this approach isn't sustainable." They exchanged a conspiratorial look, both determined to undermine Lucas's new policies. Meanwhile, Lucas met with Mariana in his office. "Mariana, I'd like you to help lead training for our new values," he said, smiling warmly. "You embody the kindness I want this restaurant to represent." Mariana blinked in surprise. "Me? I don't know if I'm ready for that." Lucas chuckled. "You're more ready than you think. People respond to your compassion. I want you to guide them, show them what it means to make others feel welcome." Her initial hesitation melted into a smile. "I'd be honored, Lucas. I want this place to reflect your vision as much as you do." Lucas felt a renewed sense of hope. With Mariana's support, he believed real change was possible. A few days later, Lucas received a troubling email labeled anonymous feedback. The message criticized the new direction of the hearth, claiming that standards were slipping, service was faltering, and the restaurant was losing its prestige. Lucas clenched his jaw, recognizing the tone. He suspected Renata and Sergio were behind these anonymous messages, planting seeds of doubt to sway other staff members. "Two can play this game," he murmured. Determined not to let them sabotage his mission, he organized a meeting to reassure his team and strengthen their commitment to the restaurant's new direction. The next evening, Lucas addressed the team. "I know change is difficult," he began, looking around at his staff. "But I've also heard from many of you how much you appreciate the new approach. People are feeling more welcome here." A few servers nodded, while others looked uncertain. Lucas pressed on. "We've received positive feedback from guests who feel more included and valued. That's the kind of environment I want us to nurture." Mariana stepped forward, adding, "I've seen firsthand how much happier our guests are. We're not just serving food. We're creating a space where people feel like they belong." Lucas's words, paired with Mariana's genuine support, seemed to resonate with several staff members. He noticed the uncertainty start to fade, replaced by a quiet but growing confidence. That night, Lucas lingered alone in the dining room, reflecting on the struggles he was facing. Changing the culture of the hearth wasn't going to be easy. Resistance was inevitable. Yet, for every critic, he found an ally, like Mariana, who had embraced the vision wholeheartedly. He walked to a window and looked out onto the bustling São Paulo street, feeling the weight of his responsibility. This wasn't just about a restaurant. It was about standing up for what he believed in. Tomorrow, he would announce a team-building retreat, an opportunity to break down walls and rebuild the trust and unity that had once defined the hearth. With a determined heart, Lucas resolved to keep pushing forward. His dream was within reach, and he was prepared to do whatever it took to make the hearth a place of dignity and warmth for everyone. Lucas stood before his staff as they gathered at the team-building retreat. The setting was a cozy conference room with soft lighting and comfortable seating. "Thank you all for being here," he began, scanning their faces. "Today, we're going to focus on empathy, collaboration, and understanding." Renata crossed her arms, eyeing the room skeptically. Sergio leaned back, his expression impassive. Lucas continued, "This restaurant isn't just about food. It's about creating a welcoming space. To do that, we need to understand each other and our guests." The tension in the room was palpable, but Lucas remained steady. "This isn't about losing standards. It's about gaining heart." He looked to Mariana, who nodded supportively, her presence a quiet encouragement to the others. One of the retreat's exercises involved role-playing scenarios to confront personal biases. Lucas asked the team to split into pairs and assigned roles designed to challenge their assumptions. Mariana and Sergio were paired together. During their scenario, she had to play a wealthy customer with specific needs, while Sergio had to play a struggling waiter. "I'd like my soup prepared a little differently," Mariana said, adopting an entitled tone. Sergio forced a smile, clearly uncomfortable. "We don't typically change the recipe," he stammered. Mariana paused, dropping the act. "See? It's tough when you're on the receiving end, right?" Sergio grunted, nodding reluctantly. The exercise stirred something in him as he began to see the other side of the experience. After the role play, Renata stood up, frustration clear on her face. "Lucas, I'm sorry, but this is ridiculous. We're supposed to be running a high-end restaurant, not a therapy session." Lucas met her gaze, unshaken. "Renata, I get that you're uncomfortable, but kindness isn't negotiable. It's what sets us apart." She shook her head. "People come here for the exclusivity, Lucas, not for compassion." Lucas replied calmly, "I disagree. I think people come here for both. And if we can't offer it, then we're no different than any other restaurant." Renata sighed, sitting back down but visibly unsettled. Lucas knew he'd struck a nerve. This change was forcing her to confront the very core of her beliefs about the hearth. Later, Lucas pulled Sergio aside for a private conversation. "Sergio, I need you to understand something," he said. "You're an incredible chef, but there's more to this place than just good food." Sergio looked away, his voice low. "I've always put my all into this kitchen, Lucas. I don't see why we need to change." Lucas placed a hand on his shoulder. "Because if we don't, we'll lose what made this place special. I need you to lead the team, not just with your skill, but with openness and empathy." Sergio met Lucas's gaze, conflicted but starting to understand. I'll try, but it won't be easy." "That's all I'm asking," Lucas replied with a smile. It was a start, and he hoped it would be enough to turn things around. As the day wound down, Mariana shared a personal story with the team. "I didn't always have a stable life," she began, her voice wavering. "There was a time when I didn't have a place to call home. I know what it feels like to be ignored, to feel invisible." The room grew quiet, and even Renata and Sergio seemed moved. "That's why kindness matters to me. Because sometimes, a small act of kindness can change someone's entire day or life," Mariana finished, her voice filled with quiet strength. Renata shifted uncomfortably, visibly affected. Lucas glanced around, seeing how Mariana's story had impacted the team. It was a powerful reminder that everyone carried unseen struggles. As they left the retreat, Lucas sensed a shift. Walls had been broken down, and seeds of empathy planted. He hoped this newfound understanding would bring the hearth closer to the inclusive vision he had always dreamed of. Inspired by the progress at the retreat, Lucas introduced a new concept for the hearth, community night. He gathered his team to share the idea, his excitement contagious. "We'll invite people from all backgrounds, and anyone can share their story," he explained. "This isn't just about food, it's about community." Mariana's eyes sparkled with enthusiasm. "It sounds amazing, Lucas. It's what we've needed." Renata, however, frowned slightly. "Are you sure that fits with our brand? We're known for exclusivity, after all." Lucas looked at her with quiet determination. "Renata, our brand should be one of warmth and inclusivity. That's the foundation I built this place on." Reluctantly, she nodded, though doubt lingered in her expression. Lucas was aware that Renata and Sergio might resist, but he felt ready to face whatever came. On community night, Lucas roamed the dining area, greeting guests and sensing the night's unique energy. Renata and Sergio watched from a corner, their disapproval evident. As guests shared their stories, Renata leaned toward Sergio, muttering, "This is going to ruin us. People want an escape, not a charity event." Sergio nodded, his voice laced with sarcasm. "It's all very noble, I suppose." Lucas overheard and approached them, his gaze steady. "If you can't embrace what we're doing, you're welcome to leave," he said quietly. "Tonight is about empathy. If you can't get behind that, then maybe the hearth isn't the right place for you." They exchanged an uneasy glance, taken aback by Lucas's firmness. This time, they had no snarky reply. As the evening unfolded, guests shared stories of resilience and hope, from overcoming personal hardships to celebrating humble beginnings. The atmosphere felt different, genuine, warm. Mariana watched, a soft smile on her face, and Lucas felt a swell of pride. One guest, an older woman, raised her glass. This night is proof that there are places where all people can feel valued. Thank you, Lucas, for bringing that vision to life. A wave of applause filled the room, and Lucas felt a surge of emotion. It was a turning point for the Hearth, and he sensed that the night's success had inspired his staff, uniting them in a shared purpose. The following day, Renata and Sergio, unwilling to let go of their resistance, gathered a few staff members to discuss their discontent. Lucas's changes are well-intentioned, but they don't align with our prestige, Renata argued, trying to rally support. Mariana, who overheard, stepped forward. If you can't appreciate the value of empathy, maybe you don't belong here. Renata's face turned red. Mariana, you're new here. You don't understand. Maybe it's because I've been on the other side, Mariana replied, her voice firm. Everyone deserves kindness. That's what makes this place special. The other staff nodded in agreement, their loyalty to Lucas clear. Renata and Sergio realized they were alone in their stance. Later, Lucas gathered his team once more. Thank you all for making community night a success, he began. He glanced at Renata and Sergio. This restaurant is about respect and inclusivity. If anyone feels differently, I understand. But this is the direction we're headed. Renata and Sergio exchanged a glance, both looking chastened but silent. Turning to Mariana, Lucas smiled. Mariana, your dedication to this vision has been inspiring. I'd like you to take on a leadership role, helping us continue to grow in this new direction. Mariana's eyes widened in surprise. I'd be honored, Lucas. Thank you. The team applauded, and Lucas felt a sense of closure. The Hearth was entering a new era, one rooted in empathy and unity, and he couldn't wait to see where this journey would take them all.